world order. The New World Order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests. He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial. How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something. We both took the same oath. Yeah, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. He is the free American, Clay Douglas. That's the Free American, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon down from the sky and drop the sun. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I am your host. I am Clay Douglas. And let's see if I can get up on one more channel here. Wolf Spirit is not awake, evidently. So let's see if we can also bring Crusade up here. Try that. Hello, Stu. How are you doing?
Waiting on fine, and thanks for bringing me on.
I appreciate that. All right. We got Crusade up. We got everything except Wolf Spirit, and they're still asleep here. Still hungover, I guess, from partying New Year's. I didn't party anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't see any reason to.
No, I did the same thing. I stayed at home. I call it amateur night out. And guys like us don't need to be out on New Year's. You're a big fat target on that night.
That's right. And besides that, it was raining here. It was raining here, and all I need to be out on the Harley or slick streets on New Year's Eve. No thanks. Didn't care to do that. Thank you anyway.
I could see all those Mossad agents chasing you around trying to figure out how to knock you off the road.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that accident I had 10 years ago, 10-year anniversary now, You know, I violated one of my rules. I mean, I've always told myself that every phone I use is tapped, and everybody in a four-wheeler is trying to kill me. So,
That's something I want to talk about today, about those telephones and what they're capable of doing to people. That's
well,
one of the subjects.
now I put up here the title I had for our show was Zionist Stooges posing as patriots, planning uprising. You know, this posing as patriots after the accident that I talked about. I lived through it, and you know, certainly living through something like that, nobody injured this badly could possibly live. I wasn't injured badly. I had three broken ribs, you know. But I saw pictures of the motorcycle that I was riding, 2003 anniversary edition Road King. The roll bars on both sides of the motorcycle were flattened. They said it rolled over me 3 times. And I basically walked away with 3 broken ribs. It's that means God or an angel had to be sitting on my shoulder somehow.
Well, he was. You know, it's like myself in October 25th, 2010. You know, here's the FBI's killers trying to whack me, and he clipped me. I mean, he came off. Oh, they scraped the wall and then and just flipped my band immediately, and I started into a tumble at 60 miles an hour, and I rolled on top of the concrete barrier on my head 3 times in my van. If it hadn't been for my roll bar, should we say, a wall behind the seat to keep the people out of my toolbox, 2x4 wall with plywood on it and all that, I would have been dead, Clayton. And I got smashed down there. I broke 6 vertebrae on my neck. All the bones that hold the muscles and ligaments to your neck were broken off. Now all of them are reattached, but the bottom one, it's still broken off, but it never reattached, separated. So I got a problem there. I can't go out and swing hammers and do the crazy things I used to. I did for a while until they hit me a year later, the second, third time. But, you know, I was in intensive care for 2 days. I couldn't even move. I had the nurses roll me over on my side. That's all they would do. They wouldn't help me get up. So I decided, I'm going to get up, and I grabbed a hold of my leg and threw it on the floor, and the other one on the floor, and I stood up, and I screamed, "Mother effer," as loud as I could because of the pain. And it was pretty bad, pretty rough, but that's what they try to do to you.
But the point...
The Department of Homeland Security was behind it, Clayton. I can prove that. And then what did the cops do? They blame me. Magic car theory. I hit him on this side, and then I hit him on that side, and then I hit him on this side. Suppose they hit him 3 times. It's bold. And guess what? The whole thing's been recreated by an expert that overrides anything the police says, by an FBI expert. So I'll leave it as that. Everybody's in trouble now.
Well, you know, it was 2 Israeli companies, by the way, that were doing phone tapping that the New York Times, when the New York Times told you in April 2004 that George Bush had allowed the NSA to tap anybody's phones, the only thing NSA did was farm it out to Amdocs and Converse, 2 Israeli companies, so they would have deniability and hey, not a violation of our Constitution if it's a foreign government doing your phone tapping, is it?
Oh, it is. We don't have a Constitution. We haven't had since George W. Bush entered office. And, you know, I might add to this, Clayton, you know, on this phone thing. Let's look at quite a few things. You know, they've gone to such a sophisticated situation with Utah and that underground NSA bases run by private contractors, controlled by Daddy Bush, who's one of these Zionist Israels, who tell one of the Illuminati 12, who tell Bibi Netanyahu what to do, and tell the Mossad micro-Hararian gang, and who is partners with them. They're on a lower scale than Daddy Bush. He's at the top. But it's all private contractors. And the problem that we have in America today is National Security Agency, the NSA. And it's full of neocons, Israeli neocons. And you're correct about that. But here's how far it's gone. What Snowden did was a snow job. Snowden, it was all out there. They were capable of doing all this stuff to us in 2000. I even put the stories out, and other people put it out. And then a contractor came out, I think 2 years ago, or not contractor, but employee, said they were building that secret underground. And without getting into it, I'm aware of somebody that's been inside of it, talking about the 6 or 7 floors they have in there and all the computers. They got more computers on one floor than the entire District of Columbia combined. Now, with that said, they were going to run the drones out of there, and they were going to do all kinds of stuff, flying over Americans and killing people and doing all the crazy things. Some of that's been set back now. But here's what is happening. They are capable of watching you, listening to you, controlling you. Listen to me very carefully. Controlling you through your TV. They're able to listen to you, control you through the internet. They are able to do that through your telephone, ground line, or cell phone. And here's why. They have the capability, and it's alien technology, they call it. They've come so sophisticated in the past 20 years with this stuff that it's off the charts. This is a reason for the naval shooting yard. The shooter there said that he was being targeted for 3 months before he went nuts, and started shooting everybody. They're able to take an average person listening today, and that person, they decide, we're going to use them. We're going to make them a shooter, a killer. It could be a little old granny, some woman, say 70 years of age, the God-fearing, God-believing, and everything else. And unless she really has a lot of faith, can stop it. It's the key to the whole thing. If she doesn't, she has little faith, and her little faith is not strong enough. She's done. They can take and control you. They can program you through the TV. They watch what you watch. They know what you watch. They know what you go to on the internet. They know who you talk to. They know your likes and dislikes. They know your entire life pattern. So they can take and figure out with their shrinks what it's going to take to set you off. And they have a whole bunch of them within government that do this within the CIA. And they're able to take and program you. And they can program you without putting any chips in you now, without any of this, as long as you're watching TV, on the internet, or on your phone, ground line and or cell phone. That's how far it has come.
Well, we've had Deborah on my show that talking about the smart meters. That's another way that they're programming you. And how often have I told people, hey, they don't call that programming for nothing. The television is doing this. Hang on a second here. All right, I've got Crusade up. I've got, and you can stop my phone, Solar Bay phone. We don't need that. Good morning, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm not. I don't feel worth a shit.
I'm sorry about that. Still hungover from, you got a lot of static on this line here.
Morning, Mr. Corso. How are you?
Go ahead, you're live.
Okay, great. All right. Now the static's gone. All right. We got Wolf Spirit up. Hello, everybody in the Wolf Spirit chat room. Stu Webb is my guest today. And we're in a row here. Now, what about this programming? I mean, we've been hearing about these people that are hearing voices, and they may have tried to do that to me when I went to a psychiatrist during the after my accident. Do you are you hearing voices? Are you talking to people that are there? No. So, I mean, were they trying to program me here? There's always been something about me. I can't be hypnotized, and real hard to lie to me. I don't buy into propaganda. I don't believe everything I hear. But I've had story after story about people that are hearing voices that they're broadcasting to, and this matter of fact, you just mentioned this. Let me get this. I got a story here on the FBI. The September 16th, 2013, an alleged mass shooting at Washington Naval Yard occurred where 12 people were said to have been killed. The gunman was identified as a civilian contractor named Aaron Alexis. The only proof offered of the incident was a surveillance video that showed what was said to be Alexis walking through a few hallway areas with a shotgun. There have been no photos or video showing anyone who was wounded or killed by gunshots in the incident. The FBI was heavily involved in this investigation. The incident, based upon all the facts provided, appears to have been a totally manufactured hoax. Same thing on November 1st, 2013. An individual by the name of Paul CIA or something like that was said to have gone to a security checkpoint at the Los Angeles International Airport to shoot TSA agents. He was said to have killed a single TSA agent before being shot by police, despite the fact the shooting was said to have happened at an airport security checkpoint, which would have been equipped with multiple video cameras. No video footage of the incident has been released thus far. A couple of police officers were even caught on camera by a news chopper wheeling out a dummy in a wheelchair as if it was a real victim. At a press conference, the police announced that they had practiced for this event, indicating they had conducted drills depicting the exact same scenario before the live event. FBI man who stood behind the police chief appeared to be quite unhappy when he mentioned this at the press conference. The incident, based upon the information we have also appears to be a completely staged hoax, and that's the best way to describe what happened in Boston. These were actors. These were smoke bombs. There was nobody hurt, nobody injured, and they used that as an excuse to go out and kill 2 Chechens.
Well, the Boston situation is probably pretty damn true because there was a bunch of crisis actors, and it's been investigated by people inside the government. And they said a lot of the people that were in the school shooting there, what was it, a few months earlier, turns up at the Boston bombing. And so that stunk to high heaven. And then you have the alternative DEPCA Stooges, which DEPCA is Israeli disinformation, the Zionist disinformation in this country, pumping to the American people. And they put out, through their alternative so-called Patriot type of sources, going back Alex Jones and other stooges that are paid by them, they put out the same story and disinformation story. Matter of fact, our friend at Veterans Today, Gordon Duff, who is military intelligence, put the truth out on these stooges, InfoWars, and other places, putting out this disinformation in behalf of DHS and DECA. So with that said, we've got alternative out here that's been doctors, the truth, to try to pump this disinformation down the American people's. Clayton, this country is really in a sick situation because there's very few, there are many, but very few that are really telling the truth. There's many out there yelling and screaming, but they themselves are young, naive. They do not have sources. They do not know what I know, and you've come to know. You've come to know many people. And even like Dave Corso there that owns your network, he knows what's going on. He's quite informed, believe me. And so with that said, the problem that we have is people are going to have to start understanding where to go for the information, and they're not doing it. They, it's like I saw being passed around on the internet, and I don't get on there too much anymore. I just make sure my postings are working and post it up on the various social media. But take Facebook as an example. I was up there the other night posting a few of my programs that I've done, and I've kind of been behind in the past 4 weeks because of other stuff that I've been working on. And so I haven't done a lot of posting on my site until this past week. But I was up there on Facebook, and I see the fact that this disinformation is going around about this U.S. general. And this, the title on my site today is Zionist Stooges posing as Patriots planning uprising, spring uprising. And here's a retired general, and he's nothing but a piece of garbage. Major General Paul Valley, A-L-L-E-L-Y. So all I did was just posted what he posted. I haven't even really wrote a story. I just put up there. But here's what my intelligence officer said about him. And then I called a retired general that is a friend of mine and talked to him about him. And both of them basically came back with the same statement. Now, one of them I took exactly word for word. Here's, Dolly is a corrupt ass-kicking him well. Article is entirely crap. U.S. general, a former colonel, again, running around putting out disinformation, trying to promote people to overthrow overthrow. Here's what the problem is today. We have people inside the government, inside the intelligence community, who are fed up. They're fed up with what the big lies have been told to the American people for this past decade. They have seen our country overthrown by the Bush crime family and the Zionists. They're Zionists. It's Illuminati. They know this. They know how bad it is. So therefore, they're doing things to make change inside the country. Everybody wants a leader, and they want one person that's going to magically stand up and change everything. That's not going to happen. So see, if a year ago, when I was yelling and screaming, telling people to pick up the ball, go out and start doing recalls, we would have been a lot further in this country in change. Instead, we're going to have this real slow change. It's going to be maybe over a 3-year period, if we're lucky, by the intelligence officers and those inside of government. We have a new FBI director. We have a new Homeland Security director. We have Bitch Bachmann, Michelle Bachmann, the congresswoman, is a treasonous. She made the announcement she won't run again. Griffin of Arkansas has made his announcement because they set files down on their desk of their treason, sedition, told them to resign. People could, go in and wipe the whole government out, the whole Congress and Senate, and arrest them all, basically. But they can't do that. The government would collapse if they did that. And we can't have that. We have to worry about the security of our country. And that's the big problem that we do have. So therefore, if you can take examples of how bad it is, and it's right on my site. It says 33 U.S. senators sold out to Israel. Recall them. Okay, and that's a posting right under the breaking news. And this names them. These are Israeli senators. These are senators who are going to try to do everything they can to destroy the peace with Iran. Iran doesn't want war. Iran is only a threat. They are not a threat to us at all. They are not a threat to the world. Neither is Syria. And Syria's problems, as an example, and supposedly gassing their own people, they didn't do that. All that was stopped. And that was stopped by friends of mine and friends of yours. And they were able to achieve that. Now, with that part of it said, Iran's going to be bombed. Valueless pickup trucks, Chevrolets, Fords, Dodges, built in America, stimulate our economy. For 10 years, $10,000 a month for 10 years, they're going to be selling us oil at $20 a barrel below OPEC prices, which will eventually lower our gas prices. They can supply us at least 30 to 40% of our oil needs. And this is scaring the hell out of Daddy Bush and his Bush crime syndicate in his New World Order. Because we have to look at why did they attack Afghanistan, and why did they attack Iraq? It's all about oil. It was about an oil pipeline to bring down from the Caspian Sea basin through Afghanistan. That didn't work, so they took over the fields, and now we're getting the heroin out of there instead. And John McCain's part of it, the whole bit.
I have tried to tell people for the last year or two that the reason we invaded Afghanistan is those nasty old Taliban were destroying the opium poppy crops.
It wasn't only that, it was that Caspian Sea pipeline that they wanted, the New World Order wanted, and it goes clear back to 1979 when they were selling Stinger missiles illegally, stolen from U.S. arsenals, And Teddy Gunderson was part of that. I have the document up there when he was FBI chief in L.A. And part of that whole deal with Michael Reconasciuto that sits in jail today, the brilliant kid that was created In's Law, didn't create it, but was involved in all kinds of black ops stuff. And he still sits in prison today. He has 4 more years, and he was framed up by Gunderson. But it goes back to that crowd and Daddy Bush and that illegal CIA/FBI shadow government tied to Clint Murchison that owned the Dallas Cowboys. That Gunderson sat down there and doing a radio show for a year and playing the Stooges game on all the Patriots. But those people, because of selling those Stinger missiles, they drove out and killed 100,000 Russian kids and drove them out of Afghanistan because Russia wanted to bring a pipeline down through that northern part of Afghanistan where there's a valley where they could run that oil. So then in 1997, this was in 79, in 1997, a delegation in behalf of the government, our government, and Daddy Bush, at Clinton's request, a bunch of spooks and everybody else went over and cut a deal with the Yukos oil, which had been privatized by them. It was the Russian oil company that had been handed over to private contractors to run for them. The private contractor is the guy who was recently pardoned and released from jail by President Russian Putin. And it was all over the news this past week how this billionaire had been in jail for 10 years. Well, he was the one that was running Yukos Oil, which is the oil company, private, given the private contractors to run because they thought it was going to be more efficient and all this, but it wasn't. Well, they cut the deal with him, Daddy Bush, right after 9/11. Blame Bin Laden and Afghan on the war. So here they run over. Here's Daddy Bush, Henry Kissinger, Leonard Bellman, I think it was Lawrence was with him, David, and several others. Well, Mr. Putin, President Putin of Russia, sees this, and he's like, what the hell is going on here? This is all about that oil and Yukos, because they were going to do the final deal to run the pipeline because they just took over Afghanistan. The U.S. bombed the hell out of them, did 9/11 and the whole bit. Well, he puts a stop to it, and he arrests that Illuminati chief of theirs that's underneath them. And that's the guy that was released here the other day. Yep. And he takes Yukos oil back. What does he find? Besides, he won't allow them to run the pipeline and breaks the ring, which is the old Yugoslavia, the Caspian Sea, where the deal was cut in 1991 by bribing a foreign minister of Yugoslavia before it fell for the oil leases that Chevron controls, or was controlling. What else did he find? He found that 2 of his oil platforms of Yukos Oil, the Russian oil company, was pumping oil into tankers for 10 years and was being delivered to Israel free of charge. They were just stealing the oil. They were taking it. We put a stop to that. Well, that upset all these Illuminati boys, Daddy Bush and Millman and Rockefeller and Kissinger and the others. So, we got to create weapons of mass destruction to go take over Iraq's oil. We got to have that oil. We started a war. We'll just expand it. The boogeyman, he went out to Iraq. Well, that's what got Valerie Plame. 250 agents and informants killed by Scooter Libby Alding, being the leak in behalf of Cheney and Daddy and the whole bit. Leak it. That's more treason, sedition, right out of the Vice President's house, or the office, and right out of the President's office itself, George W. Bush. And so then that didn't work, and they're getting killed in Valerie Plame network of an energy corp as her front to be able to spy over there. She finds out now, after they've attacked him, they're trying to bring in a weapon of mass destruction, a nuke, to say that they've got weapons of mass destruction. Well, she outed them on that. Well, they had to kill her. Well, that didn't happen, and she got part of her story out, and you've heard the other stuff about Valerie Plame. And so, and her husband, the ambassador, they were very public about this. And Scooter Libby, of course, gets nailed, and who gives him not a president's pardon, but a commuted sentence, I think they call it, where he never has to spend time in jail, George W. Bush. But this is what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's because these people have controlled our government. They have controlled everything, and we have these problems. I want to add this. You know that Prescott Bush, Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, Daddy Bush I call him, his father pled guilty in World War II for trading with the Enemy Act, which means he committed espionage, treason, sedition by supplying Adolf Hitler, who we were at war with at the time, trucks and tanks through Braun Harriman, who was financing, divide and etc. And he pled guilty. Just made a paid a small fine, never went to prison. Do you know that there's a law on the books that says that if you are charged with trading with the Enemy Act and found guilty, or you plead guilty, do you know that your ancestry, your sons, your daughters, your grandsons, your granddaughters, your great-grandsons, right on down the line, can never hold any public office in the United States of America? That means George W. Bush's congressional seat, null and void. That means George Herbert Walker Bush's presidency and vice presidency, null and void. George W. Bush's presidency, null and void. Think about that one.
Well, you know, we've got
Any law that were passed underneath them are null and void.
We've got talk about Gordon Duff. You know, Gordon, 25 years ago, I blew the whistle on George Bush's drug running operation, Operation Watchtower. You've got documentation on that up on your site. And Colonel Cotolo pointed the finger at Michael Harari, who was running Manuel Noriega for the Mossad. Michael Harari is now the head of the Mossad in Israel, and Gordon Duff, he's kind of blown the whistle on Harari too, but in a recent one, and I've got this up on the site under your heading here, that recent revelations published in Press TV website, the New York Post and Veterans Today have changed history. The story is simple. 2 American Congressional Representatives were allowed to read the Congressional 9/11 investigation report, this time including the areas George Bush had ordered removed. Both congressmen clearly state that the redacted pages of the report place full responsibility for the planning and execution of 9/11 on one or more foreign intelligence agencies, not terrorists. And of course, one of those intelligence agencies is the Mossad. Other probably the CIA, because I don't think there's any difference. They both work for the banksters. But it also says, and this is what my book, Mystery Babylon, this is what the Cotolo report reports, that George Bush's job as CIA director was covering for the Mossad and their drug dealing and their weapons dealing and their murderous behavior. And this report from Duff from Veterans Today said it is clear that President Bush's personal role in covering up protected the real perpetrators of 9/11 and pushed the U.S. into not just 2 wars, but draconian moves against America's government. 9/11 was a coup against the Constitution. Additional reports released this week make clear some of the reasons Bush lied to the American people, to Congress, our military, and our allies. Obama's Director for National Intelligence, James Clapper, has declassified new documents that reveal how the NSA was first given the green light to start collecting bulk communication data in the hunt for Al-Qaeda terrorists after 9/11. Al-Qaeda, that's Al-Qaeda is the correct pronunciation, folks. President Barack Obama's administration has for the first time publicly confirmed the existence of collection activities authorized by George W. Bush, such as bulk amounts of internet phone metadata as part of the Terrorist Surveillance Program, TSP. The disclosures are part of Washington's campaign to justify NSA surveillance activities, following massive leaks to the media about the classified programs by a former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. Clapper explained on Saturday that President George Bush first authorized the spying in October 2001, just weeks after the September 11 attacks. We can prove Bush was fully criminal culpable in covering the tracks of those responsible for 9/11. And AIPAC threw Bandar and Bush under a bus. More frighteningly, the articles published this week in Rupert Murdoch's New York Daily News, written by a Hoover Institute fellow and AIPAC member, Paul Sperry, now not only blame Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia as a 9/11 mastermind, but tie in Bush 43 as well. In fact, the entire AIPAC apparatus, the largest lobbying organization in Washington, is currently engaged in a full court press to stop Congress from pushing for the release of the real report. Is this because the real report accuses Israel, not Saudi Arabia, and AIPAC wants the Murdoch-Sperry story to sound? The bin Laden myth crashes down. The real report, called shocking by the legislators who've called for President Obama to declassify the entire report, proves that there was no Al-Qaeda involvement, no reason to invade Afghanistan or Iraq, and no reason to hunt CIA operative Colonel Tim Osman, also known as Osama bin Laden. And Lee Wanto, a former White House intelligence chief and inspector general of the Department of Defense under Reagan, has cited meetings between key government officials and bin Laden that he attended, meetings held both in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., while the U.S. was supposedly hunting him. From Wanta, who was present during these meetings, and by the way, Wanta was just on my show last month. In early 1990, bin Laden, suffering from advanced kidney disease, was flown to an American facility in the Persian Gulf. From there, bin Laden flew to Los Angeles, landing at Ontario, California airport, met by Albert Hakim, representing President Bush 41, Ollie North, free on appeal bond, and Admiral William Dickey, Attorney Glenn Pengaloo, and General Jack Singlaub, one of the founders of the CIA and the man behind running all the heroin from the Golden Triangle during Vietnam. Hakim was the personal representative of President Bush in the overall charge of the project. Bud McFarlane, an Iran-Contra figure pardoned by Bush in 1992, was also part of the group. Bin Laden then left Los Angeles for Washington, D.C. There he stayed at the Mayflower Hotel. Meetings were held at the Metropolitan Club in Washington. Attorney Glenn Peglou stayed at the Metropolitan. While there, Peglow's room was broken into and items removed. At no point is there any record, classified or public, that this working group was ever dissolved, nor is there any record that Osama bin Laden's status as a security operative working for the U.S. government ever ended. In 2001, Osama bin Laden's last public statement denied any involvement in the 9/11 attacks. There are no classified documents tying bin Laden to 9/11 or citing him to be a rogue CIA operative. So which 9/11 is real? In 2007, the FBI flew a team to Bangkok to interview former Soviet nuclear intelligence specialist Dmitry Kolozov. Kolozov told the FBI that in the morning of September 12, 2001, he attended a breakfast gathering with Mossad Operations Chief Michael Harari and his son, along with other Israeli operatives. Kozlov reported to the FBI that this gathering was to celebrate the 9/11 attacks, not, as Netanyahu has said, as a fortunate happenstance for Israel, but a Mossad attack on the U.S. At that meeting, Harari also claimed credit for a role in the Oklahoma City bombing. According to Kozlov, Harari was courting him to join their group for an upcoming operation, a bombing attack on Bali, scheduled for 2002. On October 12, 2002, a huge explosive device devastated an entire, nearly a square mile, killing 202 people. An Islamic group was blamed, just as with not just 9/11, but initially Oklahoma City too. Kozlov told FBI agents that Harari claimed nuclear weapons were used to bring down the Twin Towers on 9/11. Harari said he also got a cruise-type missile, a Soviet grant for the Pentagon attack, purchased through Victor Bout, the Lord of War, played by Nicolas Cage in the film of the same name. Bout, residing in Bangkok with Harari and Kozlov, was extradited to the United States based on a highly classified indictment accusing him of supplying the guided missile used to attack the Pentagon on 9/11. Now, Stu, that attack on 9/11, on 9/10/2001, Bush's national security guy got up and announced that they couldn't account for $2.3 trillion on the Pentagon, but Rabbi Dov Zakheim, who also created the remote control devices for the airliners in America, he couldn't account for that, but they had accountants. He hired all these accountants to look into it, and guess where they were? I bet you could tell me, couldn't you?
Well, yeah, because the ex-HUD secretary that was assigned, Catherine Fitz, off of Wall Street, when I caused the congressional investigation on HUD, which was on my ex-in-law and Daddy Bush and all of them stealing all this money out of HUD. They owned 500,000 apartment units, largest landlord of apartments in the U.S. Well, after she left HUD, Jack Kemp was the cover-up meister for him, and Congressman Kemp, and this was after the Samuel Pierce scandal and all this, and Deborah Gordine and all of them that were all indicted, and Phil Wynn, that was my ex-in-law's partner, was indicted. And he never served any time in jail, and then 10 years later, of course, his case was sealed by a judge, Sherman Fines, somewhere illegally in Denver, so he didn't spend time in jail. And then he gets a presidential pardon by Bill Clinton the day before Bill Clinton leaves office. So, you know, it's part of the crime, so they're covering for each other. Well, after Fitz came to me, and Catherine says, Stu, you know, I was the one that sent him there to clean up HUD with, and I found out it was all real. I didn't even know she was the gal. I just knew they sent someone in there. But she was in a big box, and they were trying to steal money, where this private partnership agreement with government individuals. If you show how to save government money, they will give you a percentage of the first deal. Administration.
Okay, well, all right. Let me. You kind of skipped over something here. Where the missile hit the Pentagon was where all the accountants were working to try to find out what happened to the 2.3 trillion that they used to finance 9/11.
The rest story is, she was the one, Catherine Fitz was the one that did it. Yuri DeBanko wrote the story because I got him to write the story on it. And Yuri's the one that, you know, that I had problems with because, well, I won't get into it, but, you know, I'm not going to knock it or anything else, but Yuri's the writer for Al Martin, the high-rank Contra whistleblower. And Yuri had come to me wanting to do stories on me and others. Well, I'm even in his book, Bushwhack, and my story's in there. Put some stories in there. Now, with that said, Catherine was the one that found that missing money. She was very good at following the money trail. And she also found out that they had robbed HUD 2 years in a row for over $80 billion. And it was funny. Here you got $23 trillion between 1991 and 2001 missing from the Pentagon. In other words, the money just disappeared off the books. Well, there was the whole key to this that nobody talks about. And yes, where the missile hit the Pentagon was the exact location where a team was going over the records to find out the missing money. You know, you got a journal entry one day, and the next day you got $250 billion missing. Well, where did it go? Well, you know, in government, it's so big you can hide stuff like this. She found out it was Dynacorp. Dynacorp was at the Dynacorp spook operations. They were the ones that were handed the accounting for almost every federal agency that there is. And as far as I know, there's still cooking the books of all these different government agencies. Why would the government privately track out the Daddy Bush to allow him to steal the money on the accounting? Why would this be done? It shouldn't be done. The government should have its own accountants, but you're very correct. That's what happened. Now, Dynacorp has a very interesting background. Besides being involved in espionage, it being involved in Bosnia and the war over there, and many of the players that were involved in 9/11, Gary Best Inc., and that ties those special private forces inside the U.S. that was involved with Oklahoma City and others. Dynacorp has been involved in trafficking in children systems of Dallas, Texas, owned by Raytheon, which is a spook operation that runs the what's called the division number 14, which is Daddy.
Repeat that, Stu, you broke up. Repeat that, Stu, you broke up a little bit.
Dynacorp is involved in trafficking children worldwide, along with E-Systems of Dallas, Texas, which is the super shadow government operations inside the U.S. where most of the filth lies. E-Systems, on its payroll, was George W. Bush, Margaret Thatcher's son, Jeb Bush, and Daddy Bush. It has been bought by Raytheon as a cover. E-Systems still to this day is the largest drug trafficker in the United States of America. Lands at Homestead Air Force Base where there's no overflight, customs can't even check the loads. They're bringing heroin in from Afghanistan and so forth. They're flying into Dallas, Texas. They're flying into other operations around the U.S. E-Systems steals your elections every time you go and vote with the West Star satellite system, which is part of the defense contractor they're classified as. They were given these series of West Star satellites back in the 1980s because of Daddy Bush being VP, and they are using them. They've hooked up Inslaw software to it, done by Micro Reconnaissance Shuttle, and then later perfected by Raymond Lavis at a laboratory out in Washington at a naval base out there. And he sat there and made radio waves and light waves turn in midair as a result of the Inslaw software. It's complicated to explain all the details in a short period of time. But he perfected it, and he put it in the West Star. So they're able to take and change the voting booths, the electronic voting booths, and the numbers while you're in there voting. You say, well, I didn't vote. Nobody, none of my neighbors, none of my town voted for that person, but God, they won by 5%. They're officially declared. Well, that's because of the voting booths, electronic and E-Systems of Dallas, Texas. CIA headquarters, shadow government, Daddy Bush's shadow government that goes around killing people and running hit teams out of E-Systems. E-Systems is, as Ollie North said in his testimony for Congress when he was being indicted and nailed by Al Martin, my friend, he says, quote unquote, E-Systems, oh yeah, he says it's part of the company, meaning the CIA. Now, E-Systems is a very dangerous. I can prove this. You know, on 9/11, they had nukes on the 80th floor. They know that of those World Trade Center that blew, that collapsed it. And they weakened the structure using that Bernard, I forgot his name, the police chief, that's been indicted and sent up the river for income tax evasion, and now he's out. Former police chief in New York was involved. The FBI had their own little team up there of terrorists that were all operating out of a pier, and they were the ones that wired the building. Bernard Curry was the police chief's name. So, and Cynthia McKinney, my friend, had come to Kansas City, and she was a congresswoman, and she was on that Armed Services Committee, and we had a 2-hour meeting here in Kansas City, and breakfast. She bought me breakfast, and we sat and talked about all the details of 9/11 that I had knowledge, and she runs back and she drills Blackjack Myers and Rumsfeld, and Rumsfeld says, oh, I don't know anything about the other military operations. I'd have to turn that over to Blackjack Myers, or, General Myers. He did, and Myers says, well, Congresswoman McKinney, yes, there were 4 other military exercises going on the day of 9/11. Well, I did a radio program or TV program with her about 2.5 weeks ago, and she said that under classification, she found out that there were 7 military exercises going on that day. Well, we know that it was the FBI, the shadow government, that was involved in wiring the towers. We know that the nuke was planted by the Israelis on the 80th floor, and we know that E-Systems of Dallas, Texas, used what they call its depth ray off of one of the satellites to smack the buildings that turned into dust. So we know that. And by the way, folks, the disinformation by a Dr. Judy Woods out there is bullshit. Don't listen to it. She's got pictures and stuff right in her book. Oh, it's a free energy. It's a free energy. And they always point a finger to something else. It's all disinformation. Ever since 9/11, we have all these disinformation artists who have come out. That's all spin doctor. After an event, there's always spin doctor. Just the same thing with the Kennedy murder. Oh, Lee Harvey Oswald. And then they kill all the witnesses in Dallas. They exterminate everybody. And when the truth comes down to who's standing from the book depository store 6 minutes after the shooting, Daddy Bush standing there along with his buddies who killed him. Okay? And we could talk about that all day long as well. But when it came to this whole 911 thing, what did they have? Cantor Fitzgerald inside the Twin Towers. Cantor Fitzgerald had how much in bonds coming due? Why did they get rid of the towers? They needed an event where America was attacked. They had 2 twin towers that were full of asbestos, and they had to tear them down. They had to take the towers down to ever get rid of the asbestos. And they wanted to build the new towers. How many people benefited from that? Daddy Bush collected insurance on Twin Towers. Henry Kissinger collected insurance. Dr. Grossman, an attorney out of Germany, a friend of mine, there's a link on my website. I'd have to find it and remember where it's at. He came and sued him in Florida. They took his Florida home from him with corrupt judges. He backed off of it. He found 7 different recipients besides Suttonstein, the guy that owns supposedly the towers, bought them or leased them with an agreement 6 months before. Found out that they benefited. Daddy Bush, a whole bunch of them all collected from insurance companies worldwide on a payout. Why were they in charge? Why was Marvin Bush in charge of the security? The other Bush son of George Herbert Walker Bush, nobody wants to talk about. I mean, the list goes on. Now, what happened was the Patriot Act was written before 9/11. Ollie North in 1984 sat down in a meeting in Miami where Al Martin attended and others, and I have the documents to prove that meeting, where it said, and it was entered in the Noriega trial, and Amir, who got killed over putting the testimony in there, who was National Security Advisor to George Herbert Walker Bush, admitted that as evidence on behalf of Manuel Noriega, the former General of Panama, when Bush was having him tried to shut him up because he was his drug partner and he wanted more cut of the money, so they invaded Panama over it, where he nationalized the Hilton hotels that Millman and Bush owned. But in a near testimony, he put that document in there where Ollie North sat there and said in 1984, we will blow up a building if necessary, and that we will kill hundreds of Americans inside a federal building if necessary, or other buildings, to further their New World Order agenda. And you remember FEMA was created by Ollie North, and it wasn't a government agency. It was done with drug money, and then later it was adopted. And of course, you've done the story, and I've done stories, and other stories are out there about Private Tyree. Are you with me, Clayton?
Yes, sir. Still there? I just lost you there, Stu, for a second. Problem with this call. Hang on, we'll try to get it back.
Wait, are we back?
Yeah, we're back now. Yeah.
Where did we get cut off at?
You just mentioned Private Tyree, who was on my show many times back years ago.
Yeah, well, that was all FEMA created, which are the concentration camps and all that going. All this crap goes back to 1984 when George Herbert Walker Bush was illegally vice president of the United States because Trading with the Enemy Act, he is the son of an enemy of America, and he could not hold public office. So, now could we do a setback? Could we legally? Are you still there, Clay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We just, the Fusion Center didn't like us talking about this.
Oh, Daddy Bush's fusion centers. We have to understand, this is privatized Daddy Bush. Everything's Daddy Bush. If people would come to realize who the top 100 or the top people are in the United States, these 12 Illuminati baby killers that do human sacrifice that people don't want to understand and believe, which is all real. And I'll play a videotape. We busted him in June. So let's back up to that for a minute. Let's bust up where somebody got killed trying to snatch a kid for him to take it to the Illuminati sacrifice, which the cops were on alert over because of friends of mine. And then we're going to come back for a minute, and I want to not only identify who they are, the 12, but let's identify who in government underneath them and what you can do, everybody can do, to pick up the tab as far as being able to change America instead of sitting around bitching about it, because one day your kids are going to concentration camp and getting killed. Let's play this video for a minute. Now, there may be a commercial on the front end. I can't control the commercial.
Okay.
Okay, the commercial, I'm kind of downplaying it. I'll wait till, and I'll pop it up here in a moment when the commercial stops. Sounds like it stopped.
Also, we have new details on Monday's deadly standoff in Midwest City involving a Dallas man, a 2-year-old, and Midwest City police.
Search warrants just released today show the man made some bizarre statements during that standoff and also kept a notebook full of religious writings. Inside contractor Adrian Ivashinsky joins us live in the newsroom with our top story. Well, Amanda, this search warrant was just filed this afternoon and details what happened during the hostage situation. It also lays out what police found at the suspect's apartment in Midwest City. This is where Midwest City police say 37-year-old Sammy Lamont Wallace lived since January 16th of this year. Apartment 3 is a Parkview apartment located near Reno and Midwest Boulevard.
I really can't believe he lives here.
The search warrant states police seized both a 3-ring binder and a spiral notebook filled with religious writings inside the apartment. They also seized the suspect's OG&E bill, a bank statement, took photos of the scene. Show Wallace was in the Texas area and was a wanted felon. His criminal background shows he had been arrested for assault and battery and robbery with a dangerous weapon, as well as harassment. He'd even served time in prison. Police say on Monday, Wallace entered this Walmart neighborhood market less than a mile away from his apartment and held a 2-year-old girl hostage, threatening her life. Police say during their negotiations, Wallace made mention of a group named the Illuminati. Police claim their research shows the Illuminati is a satanic cult and that they learned June 21st is their day of human sacrifice. But why Wallace chose June 17th to take the girl hostage is still unknown. Police say they were unsuccessful in their attempts to negotiate with Wallace and say they had to use deadly force to save the child's life. The search warrant states Wallace was shot only one time and was pronounced dead at the hospital.
I think that they did what they had to do.
Now, we do know that the child and her mother were not harmed during that terrifying standoff. Police are not releasing their name at this time. Live in the newsroom, Adriana Ivashinsky. We're not physically harmed. All right, Adriana. City police have identified Catherine David Huff as Charles Wallace. Huff has been on the force for 22 years. It will be up to the DA to determine if the use of deadly force was fine.
Now, you know, that's a clip from back in June, and of course on December 22nd, Clayton, they did this again in Colorado, where they always do.
And
do with the ley lines, and it's LY lines they call it, and something to do with astrology and all this. But my ex-in-law, Leonard Millman, one of these 12, Daddy Bush's partner, he hosted these parties every year. Now, because of all the heat I threw on him, and he faked his death in 2004, thought he was going to get arrested on espionage, treason, sedition, and he went down and hid out in Cuba, where he's hiding out down there with his 26-year-old artificially planted a pregnant wife now, so he can have an alien baby because he's a fallen angel, possessed person now. Larry Mizell, the bank bailout scandal. cancer, create mortgages and rob this country for trillions of dollars, 100 trillion. He's now in charge and hosts the Satanic parties. And he is the director of AIPAC, and his attorney, Brownstein, Millman's attorney, Daddy Bush's attorney, director of AIPAC. Brownstein's known as the 101st Senator. He controls all legislation written before and given to the United States Congress and Senate by his attorney firms. He's got 100 attorney firms that they keep buying up because they own so much real estate around the United States, trillions and trillions of dollars. They buried this drug money and all this stolen money. And Brownstein's on the board of directors of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, along with Larry Mizell, B'nai Breath, the cell, they call it, out of Denver, Colorado, counterintelligence ever since 9/11. And if you can believe this, Clayton, Larry Mizell is an honorary colonel of the Colorado State Highway Patrol, so he can carry a badge and a gun. And he's an espionage agent against the United States of America, all part of this AIPAC group that ties to and controls Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, who controls Michael Hariri and the Israeli Mossad.
Now back to this Michael Harari here. I'm getting a heck of an echo there.
Does anybody remember Silverado Savings and Loan, Neil Bush director?
Yep.
That was Millman's company, MBC, that Larry Mizell, his buffer, ran and owned 24%, the parent company that created Silverado Savings, where the drug bank was, that they laundered $12 trillion in 9 years through, and robbed the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation of hundreds of billions of dollars over the years. These are the same people continuously, and these are your AIPAC boys. These are these Zionist fake Jews that you and I scream about for you listening audience out here that Clayton hammers all the time. The same ones that tried to murder him. The same ones that have tried to murder me 30 friggin' times. But for some reason, if God doesn't want you to die, you don't die, do you, Clayton?
Nope, you don't. Well, something you've got something on there, Stu, and I'm getting an echo from me. You got something on there when you played that thing.
I'm sorry, it may be the volume. Hang on here, let me drop it down. But, you know, I want to add something to this. What people don't know, this was where the Christian side of me comes out, because I know God as far as his word. I try to understand. I'm not perfect, none of us are, but I have a deep faith in God and Christ, and as a result, I'm still breathing. Now, they are the Antichrist for you Christians out there. They are the New World Order agenda. They are the part of the aliens, which are the fallen angels. They are possessed when you get into their level at that 12 and the layer directly underneath them. They are so evil, they allow fallen angels to possess their body as humans. These 12, Henry Kissinger, Leonard Millman, Larry Mizell, George Herbert Walker Bush, Grace of Grace and Company that runs it, used to be Bill's brother, and he took on that alien / fallen angel. Anwar bin Shari, the head rabbi in Israel, the head of the Hedron that basically helps order Bibi Netanyahu what to do, and Bibi talks to Larry Mizell of Denver all the time. Larry Mizell's one of them now. Warburg's one of them. Pope Benedict that resigned is one of them. He's dying of cancer, lung cancer, one of the reasons he resigned. Now, I've named 9 of them, I believe, or 10. I believe Warburg is one of them. And, of course, Meyer Rothschild and David Rockefeller. So that leaves 3 that I'm unsure who they are. I have not been able to identify those others. I don't know anybody else who's done this research as deep as I have on who these 12 really are. It was because of my ex-in-law that I did this, okay? But these people are Satanists, and they are trying to bring about the Antichrist. They themselves think they're going to be possessed by the devil himself, and one of them are going to be the actual so-called world leader. And where do they want to run the world? What does the Bible say when we throw the biblical side in it? In those days, if we are in the end times, and we don't have to be, but there's a lot of things pointing to it because of people not bringing their children up right, as it says in Ephesians 4, and making them understand, and we got such a screwed up society, which they've done to the American people, to the people all over the planet, and the whole bit. When you look at it, where is the capital for the New World Order going to be? Jerusalem, folks. Jerusalem, where the Antichrist, the devil himself, rules from. Why is it that they wanted Israel? Why did they take over and call it Israel? Israel was called Palestine as well. And you had those, I have the genome factor up on the front of my website in the left column, done by a university professor here in America, tracing his own ancestry, and those that are the true tribes of Israel, the true Jews throughout the planet. And what did he say? 8 out of 10 of the Palestinians living in Palestine today, in that Gaza-occupied strip, they are the true bloodline of the original tribes of Israel. They are the true Jews, 8 to 10 of them. And he also identified that 9 out of 10 of those living in Israel, called Israel today, that has that flag flying over that piece of land, 9 out of 10 of them are not from the original tribes of Israel, but they are ones who claim to be Jews and are not. And it says in the Bible in Revelation 3:23, they are the serpent of Satan. They claim to be Jews but are not. And why is it? If you look at my internet site once again, right above the genome factor, you will see a 2,000-year-old hexagram, satanic hexagram, I think they call it. That's out at Area 52 and outside of Las Vegas, where the alien base is, the fallen angel base, that the U.S. government allows to operate out there. And if you look at that, that's a 20,000-year-old plant on the face of the earth, a marking of the same thing that flies on the flag in Israel since 1947. And who was it that hijacked and killed 40,000 Palestinians, which at the time, 8 out of 10 of them were real tribes of Israel? And why is it that the devil always changes things? This satanic Antichrist New World Order, programming the Christians out here, programming the Jews, programming the Muslims, programming every religion, and trying to screw it up all the time. And why is organized religion even there? To control the masses. So think about this, folks. Those of you who say you know Christ and have the Holy Spirit, open up your eyes. We just went through Christmas. What was Christmas? It's a satanic holiday for them. Bringing in the fir trees into your home, the Christmas trees, and decorating them with ornaments is part of the pagan religion. It isn't the celebration of Jesus Christ.
You know, let me stop you for just a second, Stu, because one of the things, and the Catholic Church is prime on this, but the Protestant churches are just as bad. Most of your Protestant churches have the cornerstone dedicated by the local Masonic lodge to the worshipful master, and they ain't talking about Jesus. And the Bible tells us we're not supposed to worship graven images, but what is that image of a defeated Christ hanging on the instrument of torture that we're supposed to bow down to and kiss in the Catholic Church? This is if you're practicing Judeo-Christianity, you might as well say I'm a satanic Christian. Thank you anyway.
Exactly.
And one of the things I wanted to talk about.
Look, Gus.
Go ahead.
Everybody's fooled by these antichrists that say, "Oh, Israel, it's the chosen people." And this John Hagee down there is one of the worst, and this Pat Robertson and all the others that have been funded by these same Satanists to push this Judeo-Christian bull garbage. If you believe in this Judeo-Christian faith, you better start sending your money to the Palestinians, and you better get the Antichrist in Israel off of the Palestinians that are dumping sewage on them, flooding their cities with sewage and urine and crap on a daily basis, flying airplanes over them, dumping crap on them. That's the devil dumping crap on those that are the true bloodline of Israel, the true tribes. It's going on a daily basis. Quit sending your checks to John Hagee and Pat Robertson and all these Paul fakes, and start sending your checks over to Palestine. to the true Palestinians, which are the true Jews. If you want to support the true Jews, and you have that in your mind that you must do that, don't give it to Israel. That's the Antichrist. And that's what Clayton Douglas has been trying to tell you for the last 20 friggin' years, that you're not listening. Take the Holy Spirit, get on your hands and knees, and ask God if I don't speak the truth today.
2,000 years ago, the Bible told us of the coming of the New World Order as the eighth beast, the mark of the beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not. Jesus told us they were liars and of their father Satan. In this book, The Past Meets the Future, that's the Israeli Handbook for True Christians, Mystery Babylon, the New World Order Unveiled. Stu, it's got the whole story of Michael Harari in there. Got the whole story of Michael Harari in there. And we got some jerks here on the thing putting you down. Oh, I guess Stu thinks anything not Christian is evil. You know, and another one, you know, because why is your guest putting down pagans? I hadn't heard you put down any pagans. And frankly, you know, I mean, I believe in Jesus.
Let me say something. Apparently we got a bunch of Satanist worshipers or whatever, a bunch of pagans on here that are, of course, that's usually the Department of Homeland Security stooges playing their game. Let's just lay it out and define it. Go back to your Bible. Start reading the Bible and get real. Start with Genesis and the very beginning and go forward all the way through. Why is it throughout history of the Bible God commanded humans to kill the Satanists? Why did he have them destroy them? Why did he have them clean them off the planet? And then when it became so evil that man couldn't stop it, why did he load up everybody, Noah and his family, and all animals in a boat? And he cleaned the friggin' place up himself. Why is that? Because the humans didn't clean the problem up. Figure it out, folks. We have the same problem today. It's time to eradicate the satanic filth off of our planet.
You know, now one of the reasons I started this book, Stu, hold on just a second. One of the reasons I did this book was because Homeland Security, in their assessment report, which is in this book, along with the story of Operation Watchtower, they were slamming the militias, they were slamming our veterans, and they were slamming Christian identity. That's always pointed out exactly what you just said, that, you know, we crossed the Caucasus Mountains to escape slavery. The Jews say they were never enslaved because they've always been the enslavers. And we're, you know, I'm not sure. I've had some questions about the Bible. I mean, we for 2,000 years, the Bible told us about the mark of the beast. Don't take it. Today they got commercials for it. Oh, you know, George used to forget his medication, but now we got this little chip here. And Aaron Russo, who was Jewish, who I put on the cover of my magazine when he ran for governor for Nevada.
I remember Aaron. I sat down and talked to him. He was pretty naive, and he ended up dying of cancer as a result of being naive.
That's right, but he did tell you that the Rockefeller plan was to chip everybody in the world.
He did do that, and Aaron was quite famous. And Aaron, if he had only known what he was up against, and if he'd only listened to others. But then again, you know, some are used for certain purposes, and we've seen them come and we've seen them go, Clayton. You have and I have, and it's been by the hundreds. Are you still there?
I'm right here. I'm right here. It's, you know, now, this is not, I don't too much care for some of these so-called Christians in these Christian churches. You know, if I met, my sister introduced me to her. I want you to meet my preacher, son. Okay. you know, you've known me your whole life, so you know, I'll be glad to meet your preacher. And I met him. And the first thing he said to me was, "Have you been saved, son?" I said, "I don't know, preacher. What does that mean? What does that entail?" "Well, you've accepted Jesus as your Lord and Master, and if I haven't done that, well, you're going to go to hell." "Well, let me ask you a question, preacher. There's an Aborigine that lives in Australia. He took a mate. He had 2 children. He taught them how to live. He taught them how to find water. He taught them how to hunt. He taught them. He dies. He's never seen a white man, never read the Bible, never heard of Jesus. He dies. Does he go to hell?" And he said, well, yes. I grabbed him by his tie, walked him to the front door, opened the door, and threw him out. My sister came back in. "Where'd the preacher go?" I said, "Oh, he had to leave." she still hasn't talked to me yet. But the witches that were burned by these so-called Christians in this country here, they weren't worshiping the devil. They weren't trying to kill anybody. They were healing with the herbs and everything that God gave us. So the Christian religion, the Christians out here, the people that are following Hagee have been deluded. They've been given a delusion, and the Bible tells us about that. I've also kind of asked myself, now, 2,000 years, we've wondered about this mark of the beast. What could they be talking about? We won't be able to buy or sell without it. We shouldn't take it, but if we don't, we won't be able to buy or sell. Well, does that mean the Bible was prophecy? Or did they just put their plan in writing in the Bible? Or did somebody transcribe their plans for the future? Because we've got civilizations here on this planet that we can't build today, structures we can't build today that have been around long before Jesus showed up. And Jesus told us, you can do what I do and more. What he told us is that God is within us. God designed our DNA. God gave us, and he put a little spark of his divinity within us that we call the soul, that we call conscience, that we call ESP, perhaps.
The Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, that's right. And the churches, the Christian churches, like the Catholic Church, like the Jesuits, they don't want you to know. I mean, it was against the law in this world to read the Bible 1,000 years ago. They didn't want you reading it.
What is the one thing that we have over the Satanic?
I think we got a soul. I think they're jealous of us because we got the soul.
Spirit, and what does God give us? Power and authority over the fallen ones, the fallen angels. We have power and authority. We can cast out demons and we can cast out devils. We have power and authority over them. That's the one thing they're afraid of. This is the reason they have infiltrated and created organized religion, and they have done this. Look, 2 or more come together in prayer. It's very, very powerful. And individual prayer is very powerful. You know, people need to get educated in this area. I'll tell you a story, Clayton, in a moment. I want you to finish your story, but I want to tell people a story that God led me down the path in 2000 about George W. Bush and preachers. Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
Let me also add that I have promoted and got it in my book here, the story of Ron Wyatt. Ron Wyatt found the Ark of the Covenant. He, where it was buried, right below where Jesus was crucified, he scraped off some of the blood that had dripped on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, fulfilling another prophecy. He took it to an Israeli tech lab. He told them to analyze it. They said, nothing we can do about it, man. The blood's dead after 30 days, after a month, or something like that, some time period. Blood's dead. You can't get anything out of it. He said, reconstitute it and try it. They did. They looked at it, and he came back in the next day. They looked at it under the microphone and the microscope, and the tech started yelling, screaming, "This blood's alive! This blood's alive!" After 2,000 years, the blood of Jesus was still alive, had one unique property. Human blood contains 46 chromosomes. The blood of Jesus contained 24. You have 23 from your mother, 23 from your father. Jesus' blood had 24 chromosomes, and it was still alive after 2,000 years. That kind of convinced me that there was deity in action, the whole discovery by Ron White of this, and he left, and they sent rabbis in to get it. They were all died. They had to fly Ron White back into Israel to remove the bodies.
Yeah, so, exactly. And you know, RonWyatt.com, people ought to go up and take a look at that and get those videos. You know, God uses people, and he used, in my opinion, back in 1985, he used Ron Wyatt, who was all over the national news, for discovering discovering Noah's Ark, discovering where the Dead Sea was that was parted by parted by
Moses.
Yeah, and the chariots in the bottom, and where he smacked the rock and he cussed the rock instead of with faith, and finally the water flowed later, and that's the reason he was left in the desert, you know, after 40 years. And that place is all fenced off now by Jordan. It was on the border of Jordan there and what they call Israel, Palestine. All those are true stories. All those are true stories. And God told him, he used him to prove that the Bible stories are real. To prove that the Bible's real. But here's where we've had the Antichrist. The Bible says if you change a word in here, you might as well kiss it goodbye. You're going to end up in the lake of fire. Well, the Schofield Bible came along, and when was it, 1600s or something like that? Everything was changed. If you get real Bibles prior to that 1600 time frame, there's missing books, there's other things. Enoch, people can debate this all they want. But what has always been the agenda of the devil? It's to take your faith and change your faith in your belief and understanding of God and Christ and what it's all about. God didn't send Jesus into this world, his son. He didn't send him in here in this world to be born. He sent him into this world to show us we could walk being pure and holy and righteous.
He told you that you can do what I do and more. He told us that God is within us, and we don't need the rabbi's permission to worship God. I tell people, they say, why don't we ever see you in church, Clay? I said, because when I walk out of that door, I'm in my church. God created this planet for me.
I feel the same way. You know, I tell you a story, this one I was going to say. I was praying, oh Lord, please wake up all these people out here that George Bush is a Satanist. Let it be known these are Satanists. This is the residing, and she is she's just having a prayer group, and she says, would you like to come to it? I said, sure. They're praying for George Bush to be president. I said, what's going on here? I said, he's a Satanist. Well, by the time I got through with them, they had an understanding of that, and they were all changing their way of thinking. But I've been praying. Let everybody wake up to who this guy really is. He's a Satanist. He's the son of a fallen angel. Being George Herbert Walker Bush, the possessed fallen angel.
If that's his name at all.
So here's one day what happens to me. I'm sitting there at my computer, and I, don't have any internet site. I'm just learning how to get on the internet and so forth, and I'm dropping some stuff on some groups or emailing to other people, and they're putting on their websites, and we're just starting to crank up. And I'm praying, I pray a lot. And I'm praying. I said, God, we got to wake these people up. Please wake these Christians up out here and let them know that George Bush is not, that their pulpit goons or preachers are running around telling them that he's a righteous man, that he got born again. Yeah, well, he's born again into the skull and bones, and he's been that way since he was 25, which is Satanism, and it's selling your soul and your selling your life to him, that you will do harm to others, and you will treat humans as cattle, and you will do all these things. That's part of this satanic agenda. From out all the money and power you can gain. Just do what I say, says Satan. Well, I'm praying, asking for people to wake up the Papagoons. They're running around telling buddy George Bush, all because of one preacher said he prayed with him and he got saved. Oh, you know. All of a sudden I hear that voice, the Holy Spirit. Go pick up the yellow pages. I hear it again. I ignore it for a couple hours, and finally it just hit me so hard I couldn't stand it anymore. I said, Lord, is this you? And he says, go get the yellow pages. So I go get the yellow pages, and I'm praying. And he says, open up the yellow pages. And I'm praying. I got my hand over the yellow pages. I'm praying, Lord, saying, Lord, is this you guiding me to do something? He says, open up the yellow pages. Just open it up. Do not look. Open it up and put your finger down on the pages. I did. He says, now open up your eyes. And there's my finger on a church right down the street from me in Las Vegas, Nevada, an LDS church, a Mormon church. He says, now, you go down there tonight at 7 p.m., and this was on a Wednesday. He says, they'll be having church. You go down there and you tell the preachers the following. And there was a 5-part litmus test. The first question is George Bush a Christian? The one running for president of the United States. Then there was several other questions, and I forgot what they were. But the last question was, is there a rapture? Is there going to be 200,000 that everybody claims in Thessalonians? In those days, you're going to be raptured? Which is false, and it's false teaching. And he says, you give them that litmus test. So what did I do? I gave them that litmus test. And you don't know how fast they wanted me out of that church. They didn't want to hear it. And I said, preacher, and I'm down there praying. I'm in the Holy Spirit telling me to say these things. And I said, preacher, if there's 200,000 people that are in Thessalonians going to be raptured in that day, and mysteriously taken out of here like these bogus preachers are saying. I said, and there's 1 million preachers in the United States of America. Where does that leave you with all these people who claimed millions and millions in the United States that claim to be Christians themselves? Where does that leave you if there's only 200,000 worldwide that are going to be raptured? They didn't want to hear that. You know, that went on with 14 churches. I kept listening to it. Go out Sunday and do it again. Go out Wednesday, do it again. Go out Tuesday and do it. I'm like, Lord, there's no fun. I said, I quit, God. He says, quit asking me to wake them up and quit praying for them. One Sunday morning the next day, knock, knock, knock at my door. I open up my door, and here's a 15-year-old kid standing in front of me. Here's a preacher standing in front of me. And I see pamphlets sticking out of this kid's pouch that he was carrying. And about Christ, I said, oh, you're out preaching the word today. He says, yeah. I said, well, step on in. So he steps in the front door, opens up the screen behind. Now, I got one question for you, preacher. I said, is George W. Bush a Christian? He stares at me right in the eyes, and he says sincerely, he says, no, I don't believe he is. I said, oh, Lord, I got a real one here. I got a hot one. I said, sir, would you like a cup of coffee? He said, well, I'd love one. I said, son, would you like a Coke or a glass of juice or something? Oh, yeah. They sat down. I told them to sit down. I sat there and preached to them about how the New World Order, Mark of the Beast, the ID card was in the driver's licenses, that they just did it under the Patriot Act in the attack on America. This was immediately after the attack on America. This was after Bush had become president. I'll back that up. During the time it was preaching and so forth. Anyway, the Patriot Act had just gone into effect, and they just nationalized. They're going to talk about national ID cards, and they got it all shoved into the driver's licenses. So you walk around with your driver's license or your state ID in your pocket, you're lit up by satellite. They know exactly where you are. You're marked on the planet. Anyway, I'm preaching this. He says, I have a word for you. He couldn't get back fast enough to tell his congregation, and he wanted to go back. Quit going out door to door that morning. And he says, I have a word for you. And I said, yeah. He says, the Holy Spirit, God Almighty, told me to tell you this. And he gives me the scripture. I go in and get my Bible. I bring it. I said, wait a minute. Don't leave yet. And I read it, and it is exactly the word I've been asking for and praying for 2 weeks. He showed me out of all this. 1 in 14 preachers in the United States of America have the Holy Spirit and have an understanding. I have prayed on corners. I'm nobody special, Clayton. I have prayed on the corner of a church one time because a couple came back together after prayer with the girl. And the couple came back together in Las Vegas, Nevada, and he got off his crack pipe, and they got back together and saved their marriage. And I went out, and the preacher, this fake preacher, had the hots for this little beauty. She was a beautiful woman, but she was married, and her husband was on a straight course. And I prayed with another girl, a friend of mine in Vegas, very powerful Christian also, prayed for their family to be united and to him get off the crack pipe. And it worked, and God answered our prayers. But oh no, this preacher, he wanted her divorced. He had the hots for her because she began to come to his congregation. And they were kicking her out because she came back together with her husband. I went over there. I went, Stu, you go with us. Something's going on here. And I sat prayed the whole time in the lobby of the church. And then the Holy Spirit told me to go and arraign them, which I did, this little committee to kick them out. They couldn't get us out the door fast enough. And I went outside and told them, go to the parking lot. I'll be around in a few minutes. I got on my hands and knees and asked God to destroy that evil place. And do you know that whole church emptied out? I heard that 8 out of 10 people left that church within 30 days. And they had a congregation of about 3,000 people. And they all ended up at the same church, this other couple that we prayed for and brought their family back together. They went to another church, got involved, and then it was over a course of the next month, over that month period of time, that everybody left the congregation, ended up in that other church where the Holy Spirit was, and there was a true preacher of God and not a phony, baloney pulpit. That's how powerful God and the Holy Spirit is.
Well, you know, I know he certainly kept me alive. And but the interesting thing is, you know, I don't go into the churches, and I've always felt uncomfortable in churches. I mean, before I even knew the truth about Jesus, before I got Ron Wyatt, and Ron Wyatt, I've had his video up on my website many years, and he said, you know, I won't be able to tell people. He wasn't allowed to tell people about this until and he made the video, and he said, you'll be able to tell them. You'll be able to tell them. But I got to tell you, the one thing that I have looked for, and that was removed from me by these people. And speaking of George Bush, let me skip this before I get into my personal feelings here. I met Kathy O'Brien. I promoted her book, Transformation of America.
Yeah, I had dinner with her and her what was the guy's name? Her boyfriend, former CIA. I had dinner with them in Vegas.
Yeah, she spoke at my events. I had her at my events, and I had her on my radio show, Mark Phillips, isn't it?
Yeah, that is Mark Phillips, yeah.
And smoked a joint with both of them. It was interesting. She said, you know, I could do heroin, I could do cocaine. She delivered heroin to George Bush. That's why he threw up on that Japanese Prime Minister.
George Herbert Walker Bush.
Yes. And he was molesting her daughter, and Dick Cheney was her handler. She said, I could do cocaine, I could do heroin, I could do anything I wanted except smoke pot. They didn't allow me to smoke marijuana. It breaks the conditioning. And marijuana ain't a drug. It's an herb. It's a plant. It's the one plant that can reach deep enough into the ground to pull out the fulvic acid that's missing from all of our modern plant life. To get fulvic acid, they either have to pull it out of hemp, or they got to pull it out of prehistoric plant material. I've talked to biochemists. I had worked with a biochemist that created and used the fulvic acid in her minerals, colloidal minerals. And Kathy was never, once she was able to smoke, they lost their hold over her. So, and she and Mark were pretty happy together. You know, they were doing all right. I just hope her daughter's doing better. But her daughter was really having problems after being molested by George Bush for years.
She was a mental case. Last time I heard, of course, I had dinner with Kathy. I think it was about 1997 or 1998 in Las Vegas. But God, her daughter, they had to put her in a mental institution at the time. And I've kind of lost touch with them over the years and haven't talked to them in a long time. I think I saw her in 2003 or something, but that was the last time. I know they still have their book up there, and they still have their website, Transformation of America, or Transformation-of America. And that's all true. That's all true. And her story's true. And you know, one of the things that she had told me, and a couple other children that were molested by Dick Cheney, that Dick Cheney's love muscle was so small, he had a little one. He only had about 4 inches natural or something like that is what they claimed. I think the average man, they claim, is about 6 of the natural in America. So Dick Cheney went and got an implant. So they call him Dick Implanted Cheney, so he would have a big crank. Pardon the expression. So when you see Dick Cheney, besides having an implanted heart, he's got an implanted dick as well. Child molester, pedophile. By the way, Dick Cheney's wife, in case anybody didn't know it, she was a prostitute in Washington, D.C. before he met her. In case you didn't know that.
Didn't know that. Don't follow much of their personal life. Don't care much for it. But I mentioned that I'd been on this dating site, and with me it's fairly simple. I want to meet somebody. Now I don't go out. I mean, I don't hang out in bars. I don't go out to clubs. I work most of the time. I'm either writing or I'm doing this radio show. So I got on a dating site, and I just say, hey, I'm Clay Douglas, and here's my website, and it's got my phone numbers on it. Here's how you can contact me. And nobody ever does. Nobody ever does. And I finally had one woman call me and got in touch with her. Talked to her this morning for a while. And after having a conversation, which is kind of along here, I'm trying to explain to her why I do this. Well, I'm not into politics. Well, I'm not really into politics either, although I worked in presidential politics. I was a speechwriter, I was a driver, I was a bodyguard, and that was Charles Collins, who nobody ever heard of because every time he got up to speak, everybody would turn their cameras off.
Did they kill him, or is he still alive?
He's still alive. He's still alive.
All right.
And but he ain't doing nothing. He ain't doing nothing. He had to have a pacemaker put in, and it's been about a year since I've talked to him. But this woman was a realtor, and I said, well, you know, she didn't want to hear anything. She didn't like the way I was talking. She didn't want to hear anything. It's like being in denial. Well, I'm in real estate, and I just don't want to hear all this. I was going to say, and I told her, well, look, I'm an oath keeper, man. I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I watched the federal government kill 17 little children to protect them from a child molester. I swore I would never sit back and watch something like that happen again. Well, I just don't want to hear about that. I just don't want to talk about it. And I said, you're in real estate, right? Do you know about Agenda 21? Do you know about the Wildlands Project? Do you know about that after the communists took over Russia, they killed 60 million white Christian Russians? I just want to go to the gym and work out, and I got my business, and I don't want to know about anything. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about that. So if you can't talk to somebody about the things that are going on, I said, you know, the reason I do this is for you, for your children, for your grandchildren. You know, I don't want to see people killed here in this country. And I tried to point out, you're in real estate. Well, what about these, you know, my Liberty Village concept says grow grass, grow food, not grass, and put solar on your roof. If you put solar on your roof in your home, doesn't that increase the value of the home? Well, yes. Well, how about this? Home up in Arlington, Texas? They called it the Garden of Eden. They were growing their own food and they were feeding everybody, and you could come over there and have a meal. They were cooking good, healthy food. You're into exercise, don't you want to eat right? You know, what about Monsanto? What about this genetically modified foods that rats won't eat but are feeding it to your children? Don't you want to know about that? Don't you? If you don't know about this stuff, how are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to eat right? You know, I'm 67 years old, man, and there ain't a thing wrong with me. I don't have any illness. I still got my appendix. I still got my tonsils. You know, ain't nothing wrong with me, and I never have a flu shot, and I never have the flu. She didn't want to hear any of that. Didn't want to hear any of that, and that's the way these. What is wrong with people? I mean, I can't even get a date. You know. Why? Because of what I talk about? Because of this show that I'm doing right now? Because of this magazine that I've been publishing for 20 years that have just come back out? September 1st was the first issue of the Free American. And I've got the whole story of Millman in one of my issues here. Mizell and Millman, you know, it was written by somebody that interviewed you, talked to you. Do you remember his name?
I don't remember which story it is. I've had, I don't know, a couple dozen mainstream articles written about me. I don't know which one you're referring to, Clay.
I don't know either. I was trying to find it right now. But it's
What was the control file?
yeah, I'll see if I
Blackmail Congress and Senate, which one was it? But anyway, past that, I mean, stuff. You know, you talk about these individuals, like, you know, a friend of mine, he's a disbarred attorney. He's here in Kansas City, and one day I was
it was Brett Landreth. Brett Landreth, who is America's Moriarty, page 14 in this issue of the Free American, the January 1st issue of the Free American, which you can get at shop.freeamerican.com. And he talks about you, and he talks about Mizell and Millman. Let me see what he says here.
Yeah, he's a friend. I was on the phone with him last night. He was over here last week. Anyway, Brett's got a very unusual story. He was an attorney, and he sued Jeb Bush over health care, how they were monopolizing health care supply to the hospitals, to Daddy Bush's GE boy hospitals. All the hospitals in this country are controlled by these Illuminati 12. And all health care in this country is controlled by the Illuminati 12. They have hijacked it over the past 20, 30 years. They've taken over 97% of the economy, 12 men, and there's 400 men who are the buffers, making more money than half of the entire population of the United States combined. Those 400 men make more money per year. And that was in the General Accounting Office's report in June of 2000, where they only controlled 20% of the economy in the year 1991. Now, Brett sues Novation LLC, Jeb Bush's company, for hospital supply manipulation on behalf of a client. He was got a license as an attorney in his late in life. He was a Boeing contractor, in Wichita, and he had 4 children and was married. He becomes an attorney. He started becoming successful, winning cases. Good guy. And he had other cases. He was representing somebody in child trafficking in Kansas. where they were stealing kids. The Supreme Court of the state of Kansas is involved, several judges, and a judge in Wichita. You remember the abortion clinic down in Wichita where somebody killed this abortion doctor about 3 years ago, murdered him, and the guy got caught. And this abortion doctor had been involved in one of the biggest in the country. And Christian organizations were protesting in front of his offices and all this and being arrested. And then someone killed him. Well, that abortion doctor, half the kids that were coming in were kids from Kansas that were pregnant, young girls. He would tell them, you can't have an abortion, it'll kill you. Oh, well, what am I going to do? Oh, well, I have somebody that will buy your child from you for $10,000. And so this was all part of a big racket with judges. And then the Attorney General of Kansas, Phil Kleins, decided he was going to go after him for this abortion racketeering. Well, just about the same time he's going after him, they disbarred Brett Landreth illegally because of his case he had against him. Brett had taken the indictment to the U.S. Attorney, never would do anything in Kansas or Kansas City, Missouri, two separate districts. So he took to Fort Worth because he found that there was an attorney in Fort Worth, a U.S. attorney, and they killed her because she indicted Jeb Bush. They murdered her. The day before she was to testify, she brought an indictment and was going to testify before Congress in a special hearing. They murdered her. Then her boss got upset, and her boss decided to release the indictment against Jeb Bush for that and charge him with murder of the U.S. attorney, and he got murdered. And then Brett Landreth got disbarred over it, and then they wouldn't allow him to put his evidence in the federal court where he had his case, that he was illegally disbarred in like 10 days. So then he turns around, and I filed in September of 2010 to transfer my grand jury case number that's still active and live in Denver, Colorado, 95Y107 against Melvin and Bush and all of them for the crap they were doing back then, which has never been dismissed. And the judge's order was, try to work with the U.S. attorneys too, and if that doesn't work, he says, we'll go to the alternative route, allow you to appear before the grand jury. Well, that was Judge Mates, and they killed his daughter over that. And so he's afraid to touch it, but it's still an open grand jury case number, which could be heard by any U.S. attorney in any district, that is, any not U.S. attorney, but any grand jury, federal grand jury, which I can't get before. But so I tried to transfer it here to Kansas City and make a request to the clerk to form the put the grand jurors in a room, and that upset them, so they decided to murder me, and that almost occurred. And then I filed in his behalf in a federal judge, in a federal district in Kansas City, Kansas, which is 10th district, which goes back, it's not the Western District of Missouri, but it's on the Missouri-Kansas border. And I filed Kansas City, Kansas, 10th district. Before a Judge Rattle, her name is, and she was a Bush appointee or Clinton appointee, whatever, George Herbert Walker Bush, I believe, for injunctive relief. The same thing that Larry Klayman filed 2 weeks ago in federal court in Washington, D.C., where the judge upheld and said, Larry Klayman, them spying on you, the NSA, is illegal and unconstitutional. And then, of course, they come back in a week later and get some New York judge and say, oh, this case has been before us. No, it's not unconstitutional to spy on you. But Larry Klayman got his injunctive relief done in Washington because he got a fair and honest judge. Well, when I filed it, they didn't know what to do. They sealed the case. They passed it, around through two judges here in Kansas City, Kansas, in district court. And then it went from there. They crossed state line and threw it in Western District, which it says that if there's any available judges, they can't throw it out of the district. But no, they had to throw it before a Judge Guy Tan of Missouri, a black judge, federal judge, who's corrupt up the hill, who had dismissed and dismissed the case against Jeb Bush, who had been covered on, who's on the way to Direct Hospital that Daddy owns and Jeb Bush was supplying, and the list goes on. Well, anyway, they tried to murder me over that, and they sent an Israeli helicopter over me with 4 Israeli Mossad that some friends of mine took a satellite and knocked it out of the air, and that was so bizarre, that just blew my mind, a Blackwater XE. It did happen, and I couldn't even believe it. And I heard them all about it, and how Homeland Security called it mechanical failure and all that. It was all over this filing for injunctive relief. They're trying to murder me, and I need Brett Landreth as my attorney. And here's all the evidence of his illegal disbarment that I got in my filing, and he's been able to use it. Well, he filed, and finally, you know, they said, you can't sue us anymore. You can't file in Kansas or Missouri anymore in these courts. You're barred. A judge, Marguia says, I believe his name is, you know, a Spanish judge. Well, he filed, of course, prior to that in the District of Columbia in D.C. This judge let it go on for a while, and they're sitting there back and forth playing the game with Eric Holder and everything else. He filed it against John Roberts, Supreme Court Justice, for injunctive relief in D.C. court. Well, they finally threw that out, saying you don't have the right to injunctive relief. It's okay for the government to take your license illegal and a bunch of corrupt judges and try to kill you and disbar you and then try to arrest you and do all this illegal stuff. Well, I got him to file a grand jury demand. Oh my God, this is powerful. I can't put it up. All the details of all the illegal activity by all these judges and prosecutors and U.S. attorneys and U.S. attorney. Oh, you can't have a grand jury. Right here in Kansas City, Kansas, federal U.S. prosecutor, corrupt as can be. And so then he filed 2 weeks ago in the United States Supreme Court, pro se, as a disbarred attorney, and they accepted his case.
Tell him to call me. I've added him to Skype. He hasn't been added.
He's going to go public. I'll add it to him. I'll give you a number. I'll put you on the phone with him. But that's his case. But he wrote that story about Millman because he was going to be my attorney, but I have an attorney now. I can't get into the details of it, but every attorney I've had, let me see, I've had David Parker of Rockwall, Texas. They tried to murder him. Michael Herrera and his gang tried to murder him because he was going to represent me on my daughter issue, and sent a letter to Millman's attorney saying that, you know, this problem needs to be resolved about Stu Webb not being able to see his daughter. And that happened in 1994, and the poison gave him a triple bypass. He had to have a triple bypass 3 hours later, and it was poisoning. And then they murdered two other attorneys. Paul Wilshire was one of them. And then they, you know, after they tried to murder me here with the car accidents, three of them between 2010 and 2011, you know, Gordon Duff stepped up to the plate with me, of course, at that time, and made it quite known to the Department of Homeland Security, this guy is not a terrorist. If it wasn't for him, our government wouldn't know who the head of APEC organized crime espionage is in America, which says it right there on the bottom of my website. And he publicly said on John Stokes' show that he told the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, our tentacle, they said, well, if you make him an author on Veterans Day, we'll just kill him. He says, you won't kill him. He says, and if you do harm him, he says, my tentacles reach around the world. And he says, we're going to take your entire squad and plant you in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, or in Jordan in a concentration camp or on one of our camps, and you'll never be heard from again. Your mommy will wonder where you're at.
Now,
So,
Brett
I'm
Landreth,
I'm not followed around every day anymore. I'm not being stalked by 20 gang members, Somalians that worked for them. I watch my back. I carry my gun. I'm concerned. I've been told that, and I am, but I don't have quite the problem that I used to have because they classified me. The FBI had me classified as a sellout to Israel, to the same Zionist Illuminati pigs that I exposed and have for 30 years. They tried to say that I was selling secrets to Israel and espionage was the reason that they were out to murder me.
Brett said he met you in 2006, but just the first paragraph in this Who is America's Moriarty by Brett Landreth, this is on my January 1st issue. Could one man, Leonard Yale Millman, with control over key stakeholders in Bank of America, American International Group, Publicly traded residential construction companies, including MDC Holdings, have caused the financial collapse of America's leading banks and forced the Federal Reserve to prop up the derivatives market with funds it does not have. This whole story is on page 14 of this issue of the Free American. Now, if we can sell some, if we can get a few people to buy this, and you know what I've told people, I'm not greedy here. You know, you don't have to make everybody, all your friends, buy it. You can say you buy one copy, you can send it to 100 of people on your email list. I want people to know what's going on, and this is just one story. There's a lot more in this issue. We've got.
Say something in your behalf, Clayton. You've been around since I met you. When was it? '94, I think. We met.
That's when I started the Free American. Yes.
And I think I met you in Las Vegas or Phoenix, wherever we were at.
Yeah,
and,
Las Vegas.
Yeah. And you know, I've watched you over the years, and you're one of the few out here that are still around. Probably the only one that I remember being around that long. Besides me being a whistleblower, you being at the time a talk show host and had your magazine and as a reporter, and you know, you've exposed a heck of a lot. You brought on a lot of people, and you have an audience and you have a following. What I say to people is that people like you and me. I mean, I can't go out and swing a hammer anymore. I can't, I used to build new houses and sub it and all that other stuff. And then when I married in the crime syndicate, the money got cut off from the banks. I couldn't go get the construction loans. And then I became a target because they took my kid. And, after that, I had to start doing the work myself or hiring guys to, I can't even go out there now because of this broken neck problem and this back dislocation from 3 crashes all in a year. And the whole 9 yards. And the doctors are saying, you're out of business, Stu. You can't find another business. So, mine is, I need support. I need contributions. But Clay, I'm asking everybody in Clayton's behalf that's listening today, if everybody would only kick in $1 to $5 every month, you don't know what difference that makes in our lives, bringing you the truth. $1 to $5 each. Some kick in 20 if they can afford it. It's amazing what happens. Clayton's got a computer problem, and he's scrambling to come up with $150 to fix a computer that he doesn't have. That listeners want to hear all this information, want to hear his guest, but, I want to hear it, but it's on the internet, or it's radio, it should be free. Well, yeah, it should be. But it's down deep inside of you. If you want this information and you want it brought out, and the guy's working in behalf of you to bring it to you, help him out. Don't give that friggin' pulpagoon down the street $20 to tell you you're going to get raptured, or come up here and I'll pray with you, and on your way out the door leave the check and God's going to bless you because I prayed for you. Give it to Clayton Douglas. Give it to somebody who's got the Holy Spirit and telling you the truth.
I spent thousands of dollars to produce thousands of magazines. I sold them. You paid $5 for them in Barnes & Noble. Today, you can buy them straight from me for $2.99. It's as good a magazine, if not better, than anyone I've ever done before because I've learned a lot. And I appreciate the donations, but I've got a magazine for sale, and if you buy one for $2.99, you can send it to 1,000 people. You can send it to every legislator. You can do whatever you want with it. Just
download. Is your magazine on a download on the internet where they can download it after they buy it, Clayton?
Yes, sir. They get it immediately. Okay. They get it immediately from shop.freeamerican.com. Shop.freeamerican.com. You pick the issue out you want. It will download immediately. $2.99. It took me almost 10 years to get that set back up again. I've got it.
Folks, everybody listening today, everybody, send $1 to Clayton. Send him $1. I can use donations too, but send Clayton $1. I know he's in a bind like I am.
All right, we're out of time.
I've never asked for donations before. I have to.
We're out of time, Stu.
I'm in a blind.
We're out of time. You
Like-
put this information out about these magazines. This issue got your whole story that confirms everything you've said about Millman. It's on page 14 of the January 1st, 2014 issue of the Free American. We're out of time. God bless you all. God watch over you and guide you. Bye-bye.